It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Bernardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Bernardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. Renato distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap? Here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. here. There were a lot of shiny, smooth, curved with leather, buckles, and kind of smelled, You know what? Never mind. Yes, there was also ore and other useful stuff. Let's focus on that, shall we? Wait, what? How was he outside? Hadn't he taken an elevator into the depths of the Earth? I think this is yours, said Reynardo, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. Whee! No wonder his mother had told him to eat his fruit. For littering, but these islands were short on trash cans.
Ravens, at least, could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders.
He wasn't that good. Yet. This couldn't be good for global warming. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager. Thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once. And Reynardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. "Gives you the power to do what you want." Why was he listening to a talking rock?
Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself.
To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies.
As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Reynardo had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the Transcendent Emperor? Was it the future? Feed these souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting. Sometimes, at home, he'd wave his sword around for hours.
What does the fox say?
Asked one raven. Another one called back.
Oh, I'm dying!
And they both laughed hysterically. The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Reynardo. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him.
firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it? That's my order, thought Renato. He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? Smashing things was fun. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. "Kill her," whispered the stone. "You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please." "No," said Zenobia. "Not that way." Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? With a flick of his wrist, he slashed Zenovia's throat. Her eyes widened even more. And then the light went out of them. Reynardo felt amazing. Power was rushing into him like water from a burst dam. Oh, such brilliance, exulted the Iblis stone. Tasty.
Reynardo returned to the Farfarer and set a course for the Nexus. The Empire had a communication outpost there. He could call the Emperor directly.
It was time to seize the outpost and let the Emperor know what he had done. The Nexus was beautiful. He never realized how beautiful. Everything glowed. The wind was so sweet. The sun so soft. The stones so warm. Black raven feathers. Black feathers. Suddenly, his eyes are filled with them. He's falling through smoke, under a dead sun. A voice calls him home. Is this a vision? Whose? Is this the time of the lost gods? Or the future? No matter. What mattered now was killing his way to the Imperial outpost and challenging the Emperor from there. This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket.
The Emperor! Called the ravens.
Don't look down, he thought.
Up ahead was Lapino. What was he doing here?
Reynardo! Hey, buddy! Hey there, old buddy! Please don't kill me!
Why would I kill you? Asked Reynardo, although he had been thinking about it.
Well, you've become... no, I mean, no disrespect at all here. Kind of evil? Maybe you should, I don't know, go to the mountains to have a think? See if maybe you're sure the stone is not all that healthy a thing to keep?
I suppose you wanted, Reynardo said, and poked Lapino in the chest for emphasis. Oh, had he just killed Lapino? Oh, damn it.
Go to the outpost, use their far speaker, tell the Emperor what he'd done, and then he'd go to the secret rebel base. Let them know he was ready to lead them to victory.
If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. Renato rampaged through the Imperial outpost like a water buffalo rampaging. At the last moment, he remembered not to kill the Far Speaker Toad. After all, he wanted a word with the Emperor.
But there was only silence. The Emperor was scared, like little girl.
Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Yes! Applauded the Iblistone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his Far Speaker, wouldn't he? Who are you? Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become? The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino. What are you doing? Demanded the Iblistone. I need to think, Renato told it. You're not good at thinking, said the Iblistone. You're good at killing. It's what you do. It's your destiny. But he set sail for the mountains, where he could be alone with his thoughts. Why were there Raven Scouts here in the empty mountains? Was there nowhere he could find peace and quiet? There were other ravens here too. Shadowy ones, transparent, lining the path. Ghosts. They cawed as he passed, but they didn't try to stop him. Spectators. Had he really killed that many ravens?
Beautifully. Where was a bard when you needed one?
Then he saw her. Zenobia. She was a ghost too. She ran off when she saw him. How could a ghost be afraid? He followed her. He had to.
There were stickers all over the platform for really hot lady foxes, with pictures and addresses and everything.
Renato wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles.
He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things.
Reynardo followed Zenobia's ghost. Had he gone mad, seeing ghosts? Was she running from him or leading him somewhere? He'd come here to be alone, but he'd never been less alone in his life. Every raven he had slain haunted these rocks. Was this who he was? A killer. He was terribly good at killing. He was an adventurer. Or was that just another word? Whispered the stone. It is what you announced. Embrace this destiny.
His mother had never let him wave his sword around at home. He guessed he was still compensating for that.
Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it?
What's there?
Give me a lever, said Archimedes, and I shall open a gate.
is a very cool sword, thought Renata. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore.
Tried to focus on the job he had to do. The rebellion. Wasn't there a battle coming soon? Oh, there'd be ravens to kill. Even an emperor. Such killing. Much wow. Oh, he'd never been so excited.
Renato checked to make sure his sword was still working. Yep.
At the end of the mountain path, Zenobia awaited him.
Why did you kill me? She said. I was your prisoner, and I loved you. I needed the power, he said. Haven't you heard? There's a war on.
Then what's your excuse for killing me?
Asked his old friend Lapino, stepping out of the shadows.
Because a filthy traitor? Said Renato.
For once, Lapino didn't reply. The demon has twisted you, said Zenobia. Abandon the stone. You've lost too much already. Her words bit deeper than any sword ever had. So he shook his head, and once again swung his blade through her and Lapino. It had to all mean something. If he gave up the stone now, he would have sacrificed Zenobia and Lapino for nothing.
So, Renato set course for the Imperial fleet, where he would end it all. The Emperor, the war, the madness. Renato boarded an Imperial ship. No one could stop him slashing his way towards the Emperor. Yes, that was right. To give up now would be to lose everything for nothing. But if he could liberate the land from the Mad Emperor, then he could give up the stone in peace. And those were absolutely his own thoughts, not the stone manipulating him. Right?
Oh, yes, exulted the stone. Feel your power. You'll make history today.
He could hear a tiny voice within him.
Don't kill the Emperor. The stone will eat your soul. Was it madness? I have to kill the Emperor, he told himself. That's what it meant to be a hero. To do what had to be done, no matter how terrible the cost. Yes. And then you can have peace, promised the stone.
The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. you tried. You're hooked.
The tiny voice, whatever it was silent. He couldn't see ghosts around him, but he could feel them. If he gave up now, they would be angry. They would have all died for nothing. Who could give up this kind of power? Could anyone? Oh, he was just a fox with a talent for sword. How had this burden come to him? Offered the sword. Yes, peace. That is what he wanted now.
I'll have to get the marshmallows.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there?
The Emperor was cowering in front of his ship.
Please don't kill me.
Croaked Emperor Isengrim III.
Here, take the crown. I don't want it anymore. You must kill him, or you will have his troops. He will send assassins. Please, have mercy. The rebellion is won. Or you could be emperor. I'll just go be a scientist, or minstrel, or sell gummy bears. Yeah, I promise not to bother you. It's your moment.
With all the love he'd ever had for Zenobia, for Lapino, for the kit foxes he would never have, Renato raised his sword. And Renato plunged his sword into his own chest.
Wait. What?
Renato screamed as his life force ebbed into the stone and surged back into him, and ebbed out and surged back in. No! Screamed the stone. It began to heat up.
What have you done?
The stone began to glow. It became white hot. It became lava. Nice knowing you, said Renato, as the lava ran like butter. And he died. And, just like that, he was alive again. And back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future,
when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens?
Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time.
Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy, and that he had a clever plan.
If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse.
Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway.
Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? I need more materials, thought Renato.
That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more Ravens. Renato thought of the Iblis Stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Renato, a little smug.
Just have a dash, thought Renato.
You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor. Obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Renato had already let that armature slip away to save Lupino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lupino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy. He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lapino was a traitor. But still, it was good company. It was time for a little exploration.
Could the lead Raven?
This one looked familiar. Had he lost this one in a card game? Welcome back, he thought. It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be Imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapino was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy. Open, says me. what was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides.
It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it.
He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost. The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lupino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renato said. Lupino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lupino leapt off the ship.
As Lupino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renato vaguely remembered Lupino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renato was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lupino would get it right. And if Renato could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector. Right?
Renato danced around the room yelling, oh yeah, that's how we do it." It was something he liked to do, but only after he'd killed all the witnesses.
Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato. His sword fu teacher used to say power gems were cheating. Stupid old fart.
Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lapino. Of course he had to let Lapino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right?
Hey! Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling.
Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the far speaker toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lapino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lapino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their far speaker didn't crowd it back. Was the base under attack too? Lapino would have to wait. The core would have to wait. Renato had a very bad feeling that something was going terribly wrong at the rebel base. Its location was secret, but secrets can be discovered. There were Imperials everywhere in the ruins, and dead civilians. The Ravens were killing everything in sight. Renato was relieved to see no rebels among the dead. Maybe the secret base was still secret, but there were huge burn marks on buildings. What monstrous weapon was the Empire using here? The core had great power. Had they harnessed it somehow, even though they didn't have the armature? There was an engraving. Maximum capacity, 130 people. smell charred flesh and hear screams. The ruins were on fire, but the Ravens had rigged up the core as some kind of burning ray. They wouldn't need to know the secret location. They were burning everything. It was killing them too. Their black feathers littered the path. He would have to take the core from them. It was the last thing he wanted to do.
Hey, when you tell if someone's far away, or just really small. The rebel base seemed quiet. That was good. Also, it seemed to be burning. That wasn't so good.
Now you smell even worse.
If only he had some way to break the ice. Or convince it he was a friend.
As the last Raven fell, Bernardo felt worse than he ever had. The core was killing him, again. The council members cautiously came out into the smoke. "You saved us," croaked the speaker. They would put the weaponized core deep in a cavern, she promised, where its poison could harm no one. They would heal him if they could, she said. No, it's a weapon now. We need one. I'll lead the charge. "It will kill you," croaked the speaker. "I guess it already has," Bernardo said. She bobbed her head gravely. "When all this is over," she said, "we'll name our new capital city for you."
He flew towards the Imperial fleet. A myriad ships in disciplined formation, waiting for the signal to destroy the rebellion forever. Behind him, the rebels were charging. If he failed, they would die. And so the final battle began.
Everything hurt. It was unpleasant to fight this way. With each blow he struck with his sword, he felt weaker.
Yet each time the core fired, it got brighter. As if the heat from the burning ravens and buildings only fed its hunger.
He wondered where Lapino was. Wasn't he supposed to be in the battle? No. He'd been captured, hadn't he? Oh, Renado's mind was smoky now, like the burning fleet. He hoped this wouldn't take long. The new pathway made Renado curious. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. Always a rush. Reynardo-opolis. Vulpus Major? Lando Nardo. If they were going to name a capital city after him, well, he just wished he had a better name. Where was Lapino? He missed Lapino's bitter outburst. Or did he? Lapino had gotten him into this mess, hadn't he? The core was a wonderful weapon. It swept fire across the fleet. Ravens exploded in its gaze, and with every heartbeat it grew brighter. He would die. But he would die every inch a hero. Spectacularly, changing history, like the legendary heroes of yore. Or it was yore. He couldn't remember anymore.
This thing really needed a roof.
Reynardo fell to his knees. The Emperor's bodyguards were lined up before his ship. Fierce ravens, all. And Zenobia. She was conjuring. He could not take another step. All he could do was fire the core. The ravens, Zenobia, the ship, all burst into flames, disintegrated, and blew away. So they had one, after all. The core grew brighter, He shielded his eyes, but he could still see it through his sleeves and through the flesh of his arm. And then he felt heat as the fire grew to consume both fleets. And then he felt nothing. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.